So next up, I want to follow up on not Jack's very last point, but his last idea that although women often opt for more financially secure occupations, even in occupations that are traditionally meant for women that have a mostly female workforce, they still get paid less than men do. According to Dr. Matthew Butler, who is the director of the Center for Population Science and Economics, which sounds pretty important to me. While the pay gap partly reflects women's and men's choice of occupation, women experience pay gap in nearly every line of work. So then what I would have done was showed you figure 2, also from the American Association of University Women. And it was a graph that showed, it was a table, and it showed the 10 largest occupations for women. And then it went down in order of the highest number of women in that occupation, and showed the pay ratio that they receive compared to men. And in the top 3 alone, I think it was nursing, I can't remember what the second one was, and then the third one was teaching, elementary and secondary teaching. Women made around either 90%, I think was the highest the table got, that men do, even though it's almost all women that teach that, or that work in those fields. And then as this graph shows, even in occupations with mostly women employees, the women still make less money than the men do. This is further shown in the 2 of the top 3 occupations for women, which was nursing and teaching. And then I was going to go on to figure 3, which shows that women have consistently been paid less over the last 2 decades. And it was a simple plot point graph from 2000 to 2017 that showed the average male nurses' earnings compared to females, and then the average male elementary and secondary teachers' earnings compared to female. And it was actually really interesting because even though it was a really simple graph, it showed almost directly. So if the male nursing wage went up that year and they made more on average, the female went up, but only as much as the men did. And then same, they followed the same exact correlation over the last 17 years. So it shows even if the men make less, they still then, even if it was just a random variable, they would still bump the women down, almost like they were shooting for a certain percentage of what the men were making. Next up, I want to cover some occupations that have the biggest difference in salaries between men and women. So it looked just like figure 2. I swear it was great. And instead of showing the 10 largest occupations, it showed the largest pay gaps, the 10 largest pay gaps in those in certain occupations. And they were more specific, but almost all of them had something to do with either sales or finance or a managerial position, which kind of went with what Jack said about how women don't often, according to the Cornell study, don't often take those high-risk jobs. And it showed some eye-catching statistics on just how much less income women bring in than men in certain career fields, particularly fields having to do with sales or finance. Because whereas the other one, I think almost all of the occupations were around 85-90% pay ratio to what men make, some of the ones on this were below 60% of what a man makes. So it was pretty shocking. However, if a woman is competing or out-competing a man in one of those fields, they should be making the same amount, if not more. Finally, I want to express my frustration on this topic and why it still hasn't been solved. I'm not entirely sure why this pay gap is still occurring in the United States. Throughout schooling, boys and girls score remarkably close to one another on standardized testing. According to The Atlantic, which is a magazine, really, 56% of college students in the U.S. currently are women, which totals to 2.2 million more women in college than men. And today, more women are in the workplace than ever before, a trend that continues to rise as we progress. However, regardless of these statistics, there are certain people who just believe women aren't as capable as men in the workplace. I even read an article while researching for this, and don't be mad at me. The quote, I'm directly quoting this, it said, "Women don't own the power to lead." And I read that and said, if I say that out loud, my sisters are going to kill me. So it was the research, not me. I guess no matter how qualified or intelligent, there will always be people who just hold the status of women below men, regardless of the evidence that's directly in front of them. Overall, our discussion today covered many statistics about the current gender pay gap, a variety of viewpoints, including our own, on if anything should be done to close the current pay gap, and opinions from various people on if anything should be done to close the gender pay gap that we currently have. In conclusion, I hope Jack and I influence you to be better educated on the topic. It's certainly a complicated social justice issue we currently have, so we need as many educated people, male or female, to discuss it. Thank you.